Country's oldest Latino civil rights group came out against it, yet AOC keeps defending it, saying gender is fluid, language is fluid. Yes, and Latino voters are fluid. And then there's abortion, a difficult issue for the Democrats to lose on, but they're trying. For decades, liberals have said if only men could get pregnant, this wouldn't even be an issue. And abortion rights are women's rights. Well, that's wrong now. Or as the kids say, hole up.
It's been nearly a year since Bill Maher kicked off his full-blown crusade against the woke brigade. And spoiler alert, he's not letting up anytime soon. His latest target? None other than Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, zigzagging across the country like a woke GPS, preaching her progressive gospel. But Maher? Yeah, he's not buying what she's selling as always. Smash that subscribe button. And let's dive right into this one.
I see a new poll reporting how much Latinos despise the woke term Latinx. It's about as popular with them as a reboot of Speedy Gonzales. Even the country's oldest Latino civil rights group came out against it, yet AOC keeps defending it, saying gender is fluid, language is fluid. Yes, and Latino voters are fluid.
So here's how it started. Bill Maher did what he does best, asked the uncomfortable questions. This time, his sights were locked on Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and her relentless push for a far-left agenda that, let's be honest, everyday Americans are increasingly rejecting. Maher flat out asked, why keep flogging a political philosophy that's been flagged by so many as toxic, divisive, and totally out of touch? Any reasonable person might take a step back, reevaluate, maybe even pivot. But not AOC. Oh no. She's convinced she holds the moral high ground, and she's more than happy to force-feed her Latins vision down America's throat, whether we like it or not. But here's the twist. Maher wasn't done. What he said next? Not just criticism. This was a calculated takedown. A verbal demolition. The kind that leaves no room for spin, no room for TikTok cleanup crews. Trust me, you're going to want to see every second of it. Stay locked in, because this is where things get brutal.
Abortion, a difficult issue for the Democrats to lose on, but they're trying. For decades, liberals have said if only men could get pregnant, this wouldn't even be an issue. And abortion rights are women's rights. Well, that's wrong now. Or as the kids say, hole up. When the wokey end of the progressive spectrum talks about abortion now, they shy away from that word, women, and prefer terms like birthing people or people who menstruate, because somewhere there's a trans man who's pregnant, and I say good for him, and I'll be looking for his story somewhere in a future issue of Ripley's Believe It or Not.
And that right there is the hill the Democrats chose to die on. The inability to define what a woman is. 10 years ago, this wasn't even a debate. Everyone knew what a woman was. Someone who menstruates, can get pregnant, and give birth. It was biology, not ideology. But then came the progressive rebrand. Suddenly, men could be women. Gender was fluid. And saying otherwise? That made you a bigot. Americans didn't buy it. They pushed back. They asked simple, honest questions. And what did they get in response? Lectures, cancellations, and smug condescension from ivory towers and blue state bubbles. While the left doubled down on their new definitions, the rest of the country quietly walked away. The result? One of the most crushing electoral defeats the Democratic Party has suffered in recent history. Not because people were hateful, but because they were tired of being told reality was offensive. The Democrats didn't just lose votes. They lost trust.
More of them now than ever are identifying as Republican. So are Asian Americans, whose support for Democrats is down 16 points since the last election. A lot of that is because, in the name of achieving equity in schools, Democrats in deep blue cities have made it a mission to eliminate the advanced programs at which Asian kids excel. Asian parents said, okay, I wish all kids well, not a racist, but I need someone who acts like my lawyer.
And that right there is what happens when you keep pushing people into a corner. Eventually, they'd push back, hard, and not in the way you'd expect. AOC and her party strutted around deep blue states like they had a political blank check, untouchable, unquestionable, unstoppable. They believed they could impose any radical policy they wanted, all under the smug assumption that their base would follow them off any ideological cliff. But they miscalculated. Badly. What they didn't see coming was a quiet rebellion. Voters who once cheered for them flipped faster than a coin in a casino. And where did they turn? Straight to the Republicans. Yes, the very people AOC spent years demonizing. This wasn't a slow shift, it was seismic. Overnight, former allies became skeptics. What was once a safe Democratic stronghold began showing cracks. Big ones. Now the question looms. Is this just a bump in the road for AOC, or the start of a political earthquake that could upend everything she's built? Stay tuned, because Maher's next words could just be, my lawyer, checkmate.
85% Latino congressional district on the border with Mexico, which had always voted heavily Democratic, flipped to the red team. And the campaign manager for the losing Democrat said, we gave up a reliably Democratic congressional seat for no reason at all. We deserve to know why. Well, aside from your terrible attitude, I'm going to tell you why. Because these voters stopped seeing your candidate as their lawyer.
Now, if you've been scratching your head wondering why Maher keeps throwing around phrases like my lawyer and their lawyer, don't worry. This isn't courtroom drama. It's political theater. What Maher's really saying is simple, but brutal. Voters expect their elected officials to be their advocates, their defenders. In other words, our lawyer, not the opposition's counsel. But here's where the gavel drops. AOC and her progressive peers seem to have missed that memo. Instead of fighting for the people, they've been fighting the people, lecturing, posturing, and pushing agendas that leave voters asking, whose side are you even on? Maher isn't just pointing this out, he's building a case, point by point, jab by jab, exposing the widening gap between what voters want and what their so-called representatives are actually delivering. The irony? AOC talks like she's defending the underdog, but in this courtroom of public opinion, she's starting to look a lot more like the one on trial. And trust me, when Maher delivers his closing argument, it won't be pretty. Stick around. The verdict is coming, and it might just shake the whole house.
Parent and wanted schools to reopen a lot sooner than they did after COVID shutdowns, or think maybe your kid is getting a bad education partly because it's nearly impossible to fire a lousy teacher? Yeah, you're going to say, congratulations, teachers, you got yourself a good lawyer. The Democratic Party's always got your back, 100%. But I've noticed my kid is kind of an idiot. So I may be looking for new representation.
It wasn't just Latino voters that AOC and her progressive pals managed to alienate. They also set fire to something even more sacred, our education system. And the fallout? Let's just say it's not exactly an A-plus report card. A few years ago, the Biden administration, cheered on by the far-left flank, pushed policies that made it significantly harder to fire underperforming teachers. Sounds noble on paper, right? In reality, it tied the hands of school administrators nationwide. The result? Student outcomes plummeted. According to the nation's report card, average math scores for 13-year-olds dropped 9 points between 2020 and 2023, the largest decline in 50 years. Reading scores fell by 4 points, and yet the teachers responsible were protected like national treasures. So while AOC rallies crowds with lofty slogans and Bernie Sanders recycles the same tired class warfare rhetoric, parents are left staring at their kids' report cards wondering, what went wrong? This isn't just a policy misstep. It's a generational disaster. Which brings us to the burning question. With this track record, does the Sanders-AOC ticket have any real shot at helping the DNC reclaim power, or are they about to lead the party straight into academic and electoral detention? Keep watching, because Maher's next verbal takedown might just be the final exam. And spoiler alert, they're not ready.
Biden wants to cancel hundreds of billions of dollars in student debt. Okay, but the poorer 2/3 of American kids who don't get a college degree are going to say, why should the people who didn't go to college and make less money subsidize the people who did go and make more? You want me to chip in so some liberal arts college can build a bigger rock wall? You're not my lawyer. A universal basic income probably sounds pretty good to a lot of people struggling without a college degree. And a number of cities have been running pilot programs in guaranteed income. But the West Hollywood program had to be suspended because it was unconstitutional. They set up a program where 25 residents were to get $1,000 for 18 months, but only a few identified as LGBT, the rest of that. Why? Because they need money more than any other people? Because no one in West Hollywood will hire a gay person?
Sometimes, when I sit back and really look at some of the policies Democrats try to push, only to fail spectacularly, I can't help but laugh out loud. And I'm not talking about minor bureaucratic stumbles. I mean full-on, faceplant disasters that would be hilarious if they weren't so painfully real. Take the whole defund the police fiasco. Yeah, that went great, until crime surged in major cities and even its biggest supporters started quietly backpedaling. Or how about the rent cancellation crusade? Sounds good in a college dorm room, but totally collapses under basic economics. And don't get me started on the push to eliminate standardized testing, because apparently holding students accountable is now oppressive. As Maher would say, it's like the Democrats are playing a game called How to Lose the Middle in 10 Easy Steps, and they're winning by losing. Here's the kicker. These same geniuses think they deserve another shot at running the country. This is political theater you just can't make up, and Maher isn't letting them off the hook anytime soon.
2020, Bernie Sanders said he would legalize marijuana on his first day as president, but that the business of selling pot would be awarded first to those who suffered most from the drug war. And you know what? I can't argue with that instinct. The drug war has been a horrendous instrument of prejudice and punishment for racial minorities, so it seems fair that they jumped the line for weed franchises the way Indians did for casinos. But it's also what's holding up Republican support for legalizing weed nationally, which would be good for everybody. And these are the hard, practical choices the Democrats have to weigh. Redress the past, or reach out to the gettable white voter who says, you know what, I'd like a shot at getting in the pot business. But to do that, our entire audience. But to do that, I'm going to need a good lawyer who fights for me.